So to moderate this panel, we will have Justin Osofsky, who is the Director of Platform Partnerships and Operation at Facebook. So help me welcome Justin and his panel.
So my name is Justin Osofsky. I run our partnerships and operations for the platform globally for Facebook, and I appreciate you joining at the panel today. The reason we brought together this panel with three great sets of entrepreneurs and teams at Shazam, Endomondo, and Deezer, respectively, is they really reflect the changes that have occurred to our platform over the past year. If you think about the Facebook platform a year ago, there were essentially two types of developers and applications. First, there were developers building games on Facebook.com. And second, there were publishers throughout the web, like the New York Times and ESPN, which were integrating with the Facebook platform. Over the past year, we've transformed our platform to become a mobile platform and begin to drive discovery to mobile applications. We now have 200,000 mobile apps on iOS and Android have integrated with Facebook, and 9 of the top 10 grossing apps in the iOS store have integrated with Facebook. And I think when we look at the new generation of innovation on platform coming from social mobile apps, the teams here really reflect some of the best. So to start with, could you just introduce each of yourselves, and then we'll start just to level set on what you've built over the past years and what results you've seen. Jason, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I'm Jason Titus, the CTO of Shazam, and I can talk a bit about what we did, or?
Sure.
So over the last year, we, as Open Graph launched, and when we looked at how do we want to make our application, make it easier for our users in our application to share what they're discovering, to actually take something where when they're out in the world, they hear something interesting, they want to know more about it, to make it really seamless for them to let their friends know and sort of share the discovery with the rest of the social environment around them. We integrated Facebook login and Open Graph sharing. I believe we launched in May of this year, and have seen some substantial growth since then.
And my name is Mette Lykke. I'm co-founder of Endomondo, which is a social fitness network. We have 13 million users now, and our vision is to make fitness more fun. So you basically bring your app whenever you go for a run or bike ride or whatever, and then we track everything you do and provide feedback along the way. And we strongly believe in the social dimension when it comes to motivating people to do more fitness. And hence, Facebook, of course, is an obvious partner for us. We launched Open Graph integration in March, and we've seen some very, very nice results since then. It's taken us 4.5 years to track 100 million workouts, and just since March, 12 million workouts have been shared on timeline. So, pretty nice results.
So I'm running Deezer, so a music subscription service. And definitely we started in France, and the music is, by definition, in a side at least, a kind of an individual experience. But 1 year ago, we were facing two main issues which were strategic for us. First of all, is how to become from a French company a global company, and second of all is how to not only provide an individual experience of listening to music, but also to give the full wideness of music, which is at the same time individual and social. So that's why, more than 1 year ago, in fact, almost 2 years ago, we started working with Facebook, and I think there is no other global partners that could contribute to us this globality, but also definitely it has changed drastically the way the people are listening to music within Deezer, which is a critical point.
So when I talk with entrepreneurs, often where the conversation starts is on product development and how you think about designing products to take advantage of social features and building the experience. Mette, I don't know if you'd like to start, and as you think at Endomondo about the product you're developing, how do you think about social, and how do you think about Facebook in that context?
So when we talk to our users, and it doesn't really matter if we're talking to the marathon runner or just the couch potato who wants to run 5K, they all tend to get motivated by the social dimension. And so when people have the ability to cheer them on, to, for example, send them a message while they're out running so they get that one read aloud as a pep talk, that kind of stuff is really motivating. And the same thing goes for Facebook. when you post a run on Facebook that you're particularly proud of, it really helps with the motivation when people pat your back a little. So of course, for the couch potatoes, it's great to just get encouragement, and for the marathon runner, it's more about bragging, obviously, because you're pretty good at what you do.
So if those are the motivations in the fitness context, we obviously are looking at a bunch of different verticals on this. Axel, as you think about music, how do you think about product development and building in social?
We could have said that in the past 3 years, in terms of product development, the only obsession has been to provide a seamless at-a-watt experience and to find all the music you want, anytime, anywhere, any device. And on top of that, you are obsessed about the engagement with the product itself. And so we use Facebook for that so far. It's still true, and we have still a lot of work to do on that field. But there is one much bigger challenge that we are facing. This challenge is that practically the people are, with the digitalization of music, the people are listening more music, but are less engaged with music. And as a platform, we need to take that into consideration, and we need to reinvent the way of engaging the people with music. Today, a subscriber at Deezer is using the service 60 hours per month. I don't care he's using the service 70 hours per month. However, I am over-caring the fact that these 60 hours will provide more emotion, more affect, more engagement with artists and with the music. If we don't do that, we just be a tube with 20 million tracks inside. And today, when we are considering the social graph, it's not social for social. Now, when we work with Facebook, to make sure that any movement from an artist, any behavior from an artist is connected with his fan and created a kind of a proximity, a tangible proximity between the artist, the music, and the fan, which is definitely building the engagement of the fan and then the value of the music. This is where we see the contribution of the social now.
And to just push on that for 1 second, what's interesting when people think about artists on Facebook is you often think of the celebrities with these huge presences, Rihanna with tens of millions of fans, Eminem. When you think, though, about Deezer, and you talk about the artist-fan connection, do you think in the range of a large global artist or in more regional, like an artist in Africa or things like that?
That's a very good question. In fact, I think more you get a worldwide artist, less the average engagement with the artist is low, by definition. Where we see the most important engagement is with major local artists. So next week we will announce a kind of a huge artist program named Deezer for Artists that will kind of revolutionize the way the artists could leverage Deezer and Facebook to recreate this magic link that we had in the physical world, and we have to reinvent in the digital world.
And so, Jason, Shazam is a very interesting service in that you are in the music world, but also in the video world. When you think about product development in this context, what do you think about?
So for us, it's all about how do we reduce friction? How do we make it so easy for someone who sees or hears something that they're interested in, whether it's music in a club they're at, or a show they're watching at a friend's house? How do we make it really easy for them to just say, I want to know more about that, I want to engage with it? And for us, that's the entire pipeline of how do we make sure the app is easy to use, how do we make sure it's responsive, how do we make sure it's understandable, and each of the things that people would like to do, they can do in a seamless way. And so when we looked at, when we came to social and saying, how can we make it so that people can actually let their friends know what they're discovering? How can they actually sort of share these things? That's why Facebook Open Graph works well for us.
One of the most interesting things that I think about Shazam's product is, as you look back at it over time, is how has it evolved from where it began to a world where you now genuinely have all sorts of mobile opportunity?
Yeah, it's kind of funny in talking about the power of the platform. When Shazam was launched 11 years ago, there wasn't almost all the platforms that we interact with today didn't really exist, and so it was an idea, a concept. People would want to know more about a song they heard. They would dial a short code on their phone, hold it up, and get an SMS back with the title of the song and the artist. But there was no way to buy it or do anything more with it. And so when iOS came out and offered a great platform for building apps, installing apps, buying music, we were able to leverage that to make the experience much better. And then as Android came on, we were able to leverage that, and sort of, we view ourselves as platforms come up and tools come up, we use them as effectively as possible to try and improve our user experience.
You know, we've actually seen some of the same at Facebook. As we think of mobile product development, one of the things we've seen is engagement's much higher on mobile, that 70% of our mobile users return daily versus 40% of web users. And I'd imagine as you look at the use cases you're talking about, it's very powerful. Now, in your introduction, one of the things you talked about, Axel, was about being global. And I think as we look in this room at a set of entrepreneurs in Europe, when we looked at Open Graph submissions over the last 3 months, the number 2 city in the world for Open Graph submissions was actually Paris, right after San Francisco, and 40% came from European developers. But it's not just about launching in Europe, it's about going global. How have you thought in the context of Deezer, about globalization at a product level?
For us, it was a kind of an initial conviction that France or domestic countries will not be enough to build a sustainable business. And so very quickly we investigate outside of France. And the good thing of being European is your domestic market is not like in the US. And so you need to look on the other side of the border. And when you cross the border, it's another language, it's another culture, it's a complexity. So you need suddenly to embrace the full complexity of the world, which is a chance, which is definitely a chance. For me, paradoxically, Facebook has teach to the world that a product could be at the same time hyper global and at the same time hyper local, because of the Facebook user, you cannot have a more cultural shaped experience than Facebook, because it's very targeted. So the fact of going with you was an ability for us to be global in a scale, so the same product worldwide, and you give us access to 750 million Facebook user a month, which for us was an incredible opportunity. But at the same time, we tailor-made a specific musical experience country per country, which was resonating with the hyper-locality of your service.
Are you localizing your product? Or when you say you have a specific music experience by country?
In fact, we are hyper-localizing the product in terms, of course, of language, promotion, marketing, and so on, but mainly in terms of content, in terms of editorial recommendation, and in terms of integration of the service within the musical landscape locally, all the festivals, all so on. So we had to establish 15 offices worldwide, and 48 head of editorial who are running all the different cultural identity worldwide. And it was possible just because we were connected with you.
And Mette, when we then look to a very different industry, how do you think about taking your product global, and what have you experienced?
So when we started out, the whole vision was a world where everybody exercises regularly. So obviously we had to go...
Except maybe me.
Except you at the time, right now, yeah. So obviously we had to go global first, and being based in Denmark, you have a population of 5 million, so that will only take you so far. And we actually got turned down from some investors because we didn't plan on launching in Danish. We wanted to just do English from the beginning, and they thought that was a very bad idea. But we launched in English. We support, I think on Android, 20 different languages now. We have users in 200 countries, so basically all over the map. And we still only have 2 offices, Copenhagen and San Francisco. So we really try to just stay in a few places and then travel a lot, because that is required.
And it's pretty interesting. So you have 15 offices globally. You have 2 offices globally. How have you essentially limited yourself to 2 offices while you're touching 200 countries?
So I think for us, we've never really had a marketing budget. So any kind of traditional advertising has been a no-go for us. So it's all driven by partnerships with the main app stores, with Facebook. It's viral, it's PR, that kind of stuff that you can actually do from one location pretty much and then travel every now and then. And it's cheap too, which is good for a startup.
And Jason, Shazam is clearly a very global product. How have you thought about that product?
So for us, I think we set a goal of being able to say all around the world our product should work and work well. And then knowing that we're going to have to work really hard. We actually have a team of people who are sort of our music team going deep on going out and finding good content. And we use things like social media to get feedback from users saying, and I've seen things say, I wish Shazam had better Malaysian folk music coverage. And that would be coming from people in Malaysia saying that, or there's various Central and South American, very regional kinds of music that we discover from our users that say, love your product, but I'm really upset that my favorite band wasn't in it. And so that's our never-ending task to sort of make all the world's audio discoverable through Shazam. But we're able to do that because of the core product model, and I think this is very true for Facebook as well. It is help people discover more around them. That isn't a regional specific, cultural specific, language specific thing. Just like communicating and sharing with my friends, and it just is. It makes it very. We have a very difficult task, but it is applicable across the world. And in almost all the markets we're in the top, say, 35, 40 apps throughout the developed world and developing world. And that's, it was something we're proud of and something we try and continue to improve.
Now, Mette, in the answer you just gave, as you discussed the two-office model, you referred to kind of advertising and partnerships and driving the business through those levers. As you think about the business model for Endomondo, what is your business model? What are your revenue streams? How do you make money?
Yeah, so we have different revenue channels. One is premium content. We have a free and a paid version of our app. Then just a few weeks ago, we launched a subscription solution on the website, which will unlock additional features, and you'll soon get some of those features on the mobile as well, because everything is going to be mobile eventually. So that's premium content is one element. Then we have ads on the website and within the free app. And then we've also had an e-commerce channel for a while. We're slowly killing that now, and partnering up with other stores that are better at running a web shop than we are. But that's the three revenue channels.
And so it sounds like over time you've been diversifying your revenue streams, for instance, launching subscriptions. You've also then taken a critical look at business models, saying, e-commerce isn't core. How have you thought through the trade-offs in terms of as you build a scalable long-term business?
Yeah, so for the past 4.5 years, we've had a trade-off between growth and profitability. And we've clearly prioritized growth because we just, it's a one winner takes all kind of game here. So we just really wanted to grow. But at the same time, you have to become profitable at some point. We've been at this now for 5 years, so we've had to take a look at the revenue model and start charging for something, which I guess to a certain is kind of fair at some point.
Yeah. And as you look at Deezer's business model, how do you think about it?
We are a music subscription company, so our business model is paid subscription. However, we have a recruitment funnel which is using a free usage on PC to drive experience, to push people activating their mobile, and when they have the full mobile experience, then they can contemplate the opportunity of paying. So when we see this business model, the question is, how can you make your free service to emerge? Because it's nice to have a funnel. If it's empty, you don't care. That's where Facebook is changing our life. Because, as I said, 750 million Facebook users in the country we are open today. To exist, to emerge, and to become a major destination as a free service is a marketing stake by itself. But thanks to the virality of the service mixed with the virality of Facebook, spontaneously it works. Today, this morning in Sydney, we announced that next week there will be a significant, never seen before, free space on PC for Deezer in Australia and New Zealand. Why can we do that? We can do that because after a year with you, we know the viability of Australia. So we know the economics of the free space, and we know we can build a sustainable model based on that.
And when Mette was describing your business strategy, you used an interesting phrase. You said, we're in a winner-take-all space, so this is why we prioritize growth right now. When you think of the music industry in your various markets, do you think it's a winner-take-all space, or do you kind of view it differently strategically as you're building your business?
No, I don't think at all it's a winner-takes-all space. I think, first of all, when you get into being primarily a subscription service, and when the people have to pay for 10 euro per month, like telco, like every other business that way, there is space for marketing differentiation and so for splits of the market between different actors. I think there will be one day interoperability between all the playlists. So the question, and there will be new actors like Google, Apple, YouTube. So the market will be highly competitive. And so the question will come, what will be your offer in that? What are you contributing more than just distributing music? This is the where would come the differentiation. But I don't see any winner-takes-all market.
And Jason, as you look at Shazam's business model and how it's evolving, how do you look at this?
So I think we're in a somewhat unique space, which is great in that we do have the traditional. We've had a premium application. We actually do have in-app banners and such, but for the fastest growing parts of our revenue, now it's both around affiliate revenue for people who buy music or television shows, and also for people who respond to advertisements. So you see an advertisement on TV. You actually, it says Shazam for more information. You push the button, you can actually, get sometimes free offers, more information about the products. And what that ends up being for us is it's this weird intersection of the people who see those ads or buy that media and give us revenue. They chose to do that. It was in their interest. It was users who wanted to know more. It was an advertiser who actually paid us, or a partner who paid us for that. And it ends up being a win-win-win. We didn't jam something in front of somebody they didn't want to see. We had someone who, this is actually an interesting stat for us, 8 to 12% of people who Shazam a song buy it. We have 10 million tags a day. So we have a really high volume of people who are actually saying, I want to know more about that. I want to buy that or find out about it. And we're not pushing it in people's faces. It's honestly, for us, about saying, how do we reduce the friction and make it easier for them to do so?
One of the interesting aspects of your reflections there is how important the user experience is to you, even in the context of monetization. One of the things I often like to ask in settings like this is when you think of user stories or kind of cool user experience that have happened, what jumps at you as one of the most interesting one on Shazam?
Well, if watching social media after big events, we launched in the U.S. in September that you can actually use Shazam on any of 160 TV channels. So if you're in the U.S., you can flip to whatever channel you want, Shazam it. We'll tell you. Give you information on the cast, all the music that's been played in that show so far, gossip about the members of the cast are in that, Wikipedia links, all that. And just watching, we've always had what we view as sort of a magical experience, and that's part of what we try and create. And getting to watch people discover that and see people say, oh my God, I just Shazammed the Olympics, and it knew that I was watching the Olympics and told me all the songs that were playing. Or the generational thing for us, if we have, we're actually a pretty broad market app now with over 250 million users, but there's still this, you can see the young people saying, I just showed my parents Shazam, and they're just sitting there doing it over and over again because they can't understand how this is possible. And that to us is something that we share that across the company and let that kind of excitement and response fuel what we do.
And Mette, for Endomondo, what's a really great user experience? What's the type that when you're talking as a leadership team, you're like, this is what we're all about?
So one of the things that motivates us and the whole team the most is the feedback we get from users. And we have similar stories with a grandmother who didn't used to do any kind of fitness, and suddenly she found Endomondo, and she signed up in a second, and now tracking her first, even if it's just a dog walk or something, eventually she'll probably start running and have fun with that. So when these people tell us that they can do it, and they're like 60 plus, a lot of them, then it's really, really great, because we actually get to impact people's lives, and they get to free their endorphins, as we like to say.
What's the equivalent for Deezer? What kind of really motivates your team?
What we, the proof of concept, the proof of vision for us would be, because today it's not yet there, the fact of giving to any artist the audience they deserve. I think we are not realizing at which point the music we are listening is not linked to what we'd like to listen, but it's linked to the structure of distribution of the music in every given country. And when we are considering being global, as we said before, it's not only to get some new big markets like Brazil or Turkey and so on. It's also to open any tiny market, to open to the creation of any tiny market, to have access to the worldwide audience they deserve. If we succeed doing that, there is no question the African musician will become the world's most important music star. And there will be a lot of your music consumption which will be linked from the music you come from, the country you come from, and not only from the traditional distribution structure which are in place today. So my dream, we just opened a big operation with the telco operator Orange in Ivory Coast. And so there is the start of a monetization in Ivory Coast who never went monetized before. And we start to see some African artists coming toward us in Abidjan, finding some producers to sign with, getting into Deezer, and then being accessible worldwide to their family, to their friend, to their community. So my dream is that one day one of those artists become a famous star just because for once his talents reach his audience.
What hits me about what you're saying, particularly given the various markets that you're going into and the way you're expanding your global footprint, it must also tie back a lot to product development. As you think of developing mobile products, whether integrating with Facebook platform or others, how do you think at product development, do you begin developing just for a platform, call it iOS, Android, et cetera? Do you do things in parallel? How do you make those trade-offs as you're building this business?
I think, I'm talking about the re-engagement with music and about the globalization of the consumption, as we just said. But the DNA of the company is at Awad at the beginning. In your life, you have many services online and on the mobile. And for some who represents a major stake for you, like mails, unlike music, their service needs to be device neutral, needs to be operating system neutral, it needs to be everywhere. There is no question about that. So we really take care of not being trapped into one ecosystem, and it's very hard because there are big players everywhere, because that's because our matter, which is music, deserves to be absolutely device and ecosystem neutral. When we do so, we do it by our own, by developing the different application. But we made also the choice of opening our API. And we had the choice to open the API the Apple style, which is Mr. Developers come to us, develop in our environment for our subscriber. We decided instead to develop it the Facebook style, which is for the first time ever, if anyone needs music worldwide, there is one music building block to be used, which is Deezer, within your service, to enhance your service. So there is no question we need to be everywhere, and we did to adapt the experience to the interface itself. Of course, TV interface is not the same as the car interface for music.
And it looked like, Mette, you had something to... Oh, I was saying you go up with your mic. I was wondering how you think about product development, the iOS and Android platforms, like how you prioritize one of the others. If you do you do it in parallel?
So from the very beginning, because we wanted to be the social player within this fitness space, we had to support a lot of different operating systems. Basically, more or less all of them, because we didn't want to put a ceiling on how large the community could really be. And this was back in 2008, so it wasn't very obvious back then what was going to happen. iPhone didn't even have GPS at the time, so we started out on Symbian. And we actually support 7 different platforms today, but obviously iPhone and Android are the main ones. And then Windows Phone is also a platform that we still continue to maintain. But we try to focus on those 3 now.
And Jason, how's this played out in the context of Shazam?
I think it's probably fairly similar. I mean, for us, we were lucky when iOS first came out. We had the pre-release SDK, or one of the first apps out the door, and that so as a platform, it's done very well for us. But we as well, we've been on Symbian, on Brew, Java, Windows Phone, BlackBerry, like pretty much every kind of OS out there. But where we are right now is when we say, what we want to make sure we make an amazing experience for, and where we focus our efforts are iPhone and Android, and then we're actually we've been spending more time on Windows Phone lately. And Windows, we actually launched a Windows 8 app a few weeks ago, and so we think that is a reasonable opportunity going forward.
And then to tie a little back to where we began, how do you think about Facebook development in the context of building iOS and Android and other apps?
There are some challenges for us. It's one of the things where the platforms, they want to provide value. They want to add integration and say, hey, you can use our own framework for interacting with Facebook. And I think that works well. The native opportunities on a bunch of these platforms work well if you have a very basic need. You just want to be able to post. But once you want to start doing something that I would say is somewhat bespoke and appropriate for the use case that we're thinking of, then you have to move further, and you have to be doing it on your own. And that's then we just get into the when do you support things on certain platforms? When can we do it? What are the dynamics of the different platforms? And that's just the joy of mobile development.
Yeah. And Mette, when you think of developing on Facebook in this context, what are you looking for out of Facebook? What value are you trying to drive via Facebook versus other places where you're prioritizing on your roadmap?
So far, it's been the whole experience when you share an Endomondo workout on Facebook has been very much about sharing afterwards. So what we're really looking for going forward is getting more of a live experience into that. So make it more interactive and make it possible for people to actually cheer you on while you're out running, which is where you need the motivation the most.
And what if we were building for you the perfect live experience? How would you imagine it working? Describe the use case.
So the use case would be for me to go out for a run, for Jason to see it in his news feed, type in a short message, which would then be read aloud to me live while I was out running. That would be ideal. You can do that from Endomondo, but people tend to have Facebook open all day, so there's a much greater likelihood they would see me on Facebook.
And then for Deezer, if you were giving us advice on what you'd like us to build on our platform next, what would you like to see us create? How could we help drive some of your use cases?
The first phase of the partnership with Facebook has been focused into globality acquisition and bringing social into music. And that's, the business is not yet there, but the work has been done. Now, in an ideal world, we need to build with you and with the artist a much seamless experience for music fans. And for me, it means to make tangible on Facebook, on Deezer, the proximity that every people has with a given artist. It's not only I like, I don't like, I am fan, I'm not a fan. It's to make tangible the artist being part of yourself and yourself owning a part of the artist. This is what I'd love to work with you. So having around the table celebrities, artists, platforms and yourself, and trying to build this new experience which is re-engaging the people with music.
So to shift gears a little bit, we're at LeWeb in Paris today. And in many senses, your companies have grown out of Europe and grown out of various places. What do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of starting a company in a given location? Where do you think you would think of starting a company if you had to do it from scratch? And how would you think through those trade-offs for kind of entrepreneurs in the room that may be thinking of that? I don't know, Mette, if you have thoughts. You have 2 offices. What have been kind of the advantages and the challenges of having, say, a Copenhagen and San Francisco operation?
Well, first of all, I think it's been an advantage for us to be starting out in a Copenhagen, because it's so small. We had to think global from the beginning. Whereas if you start out in San Francisco, you may have a tendency to focus on the U.S. market. But other than that, we really. Sorry, can you say again?
Yeah, no, this is exactly what I thought might be interesting, which is you started a company in Copenhagen. What were some of what went through as you grew this company and thought about it? What were some of the trade-offs?
Yeah, the other thing is that it's actually been kind of a competitive advantage for us to have the development team in Copenhagen. When we started up the office in San Francisco, we thought we wanted to have a full development team there, but it's so expensive and the competition is just so cruel with you guys and everybody else being there. Whereas in Copenhagen, we have a much stronger brand and it's easier for us to attract the good people.
And as you've grown into 15 offices globally, how have you thought through that strategy? When do you make the decision to expand into another market in terms of your organizational footprint? Versus when are you just going into one of the remaining 185 countries you're in without as much of an organizational footprint?
So, in fact, there were two organization consequences. The first one has been when you do your second country, you don't do it as a new country. You do it as the second country out of 200. So you build your product and your company to be scalable day one. So it's overinvestment at this moment, but that's the only way to survive and to embrace globality. Organizationally, it's also, we are in a phase with all those new offices we opened this summer. We have to define very clearly what has to do with the local work, what has to do with the central work. And it's a soft matter. It has to adapt every day. But I'm sure that a global efficiency will come to an ability of finding the right middle place between what needs to be done by the Brazilian team and what needs to be done by the central team.
And I'm sure an important aspect of that comes down to what is at the core of your culture and how do you carry a culture across. When you think of the core of Deezer's culture, what jumps at you?
I think there is an initial culture about innovation, which has not definitely something to do with that. The second culture is the fact that we are so obsessed about the musical user experience. We are pure player. We don't want to go video. We don't want to go to movie. We just want to be the best music service. Then when we thought about another country, it's so obvious that then you needed to be culturally adapted. It's not even a choice. It's just the results of who you are. We could have decided to be a smart jukebox, a tool which is good for all the people who love music, know their music and use it. It's not mass market. This is not what we wanted to build. We really want to build from the very beginning services which is enhancing your musical experience. So that's why we needed to be culturally adapted.
And Jason, when you think about Shazam's culture, what are the core tenets and how do they play out as you think through these types of issues?
So, one of the key things, and I think I was touching on it earlier, for us is how do we make sure that when we're doing things, we're thinking through like what is this actually, what does it mean for users? Like when we focus on performance, there was really just I think there was a matter of pride within the company of just folks going through and sitting down and saying, okay, here's what we're doing. How are we doing against our competitors? How fast could I actually launch this and get what I want? And that there was a pride in what they're building and the craftsmanship they were putting into that. I think to when you look at the global distribution, I think we've tried to have the kind of passion about what people are doing applied to the areas that they're in. So we have folks in the U.S. are really on the development side are really focused on TV and advertisements and how do we make that experience great. And they're passionate on it, and they follow that. And there's we have a music team that is absolutely engaged with what they're doing, and then we spend time in figuring out how do we make sure that cross-dependency-wise and interaction-wise that people can actually get their work done and work well.
And then when you think about development on Facebook in that context, is it one team that sits within Shazam that's focusing on Facebook, or have you built it more as a horizontal function in some sense?
I think it's evolving for us, honestly. I think when we started, we said it's going to be one team that's going to make, they're going to understand how Facebook works, and they're going to dive in deep and work on that. But then as we wanted to say, okay, but we want this, we want really deep, social television experiences. So okay, well that within that team there needs to be the people who know and love Facebook and understand all the dynamics, and that's so it is now I think spreading into more of a horizontal.
For Endomondo, how do you think about building the teams that build on Facebook?
So we have a server-side team, and then we have other resources on iPhone and Android.
And then for Deezer, how do you do it? Is it
It's a very difficult question, in fact, because to define your exact strategy of integration with Facebook is very, very sharp. It's very detailed. You need time. It's not easy choice of doing that. You need to get really in the details. But at the same time, those details are all strategic about what will be your value, the split of value with Facebook, your future, your independency, and so on. So it's very difficult to run internally. At the same time, this passion for details, and at the same time, to keep the strategic involvement that every details will mean to you. So the chance we had, the founder of the company, is, I should say, a French Mark Zuckerberg. He will hate that I said that. Okay, he loved Mark, but not to be resumed to that. And he's a guy who is the only one I know who is so able to, at the same time, being so critically involved into the tiny details which makes the user experience, but at the same time keeping the global vision. So finally, it's much more like a commando, a small team of people dedicated to reviewing everything within Deezer versus what could be done with Facebook, than a kind of specific functions on a side of other function in the company.
What's interesting to me about that answer is the most successful developers that my team's worked with often are viewing Facebook as a core part of the social design. It's not a side team that you're trying to bolt on. It sounds like in your position as CEO, you literally are going into the core product and how we're integrating Facebook in addition to the higher level strategic questions.
Absolutely. I think if it was not the founder who will be interfacing with Facebook, we won't be where we are today. It was the only ways to rethink the product as being natively Facebook connected.
So while we have a few minutes left, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here in terms of how you've integrated to date, how you're organized to do it, some of the trade-offs you've made along the way. Let's be a little bit forward-looking. Jason, in your answers at various moments, you've talked about the future of social TV, where the world's headed. When you project 3 to 5 years out, knowing this is a bit challenging because you start in a world where it's an SMS code, and now we've got a slightly different Shazam. Where do you think we are 3 to 5 years from now with your product, and how do you think you're going to leverage social?
So I think that there are two areas that are very clear problem / opportunities that we see, and it's a lot about some of the same nuggets of what we've been working on around how do we make things easier, how do we reduce friction. One of them is I would expect that you don't, our goal is that you don't have to just pull out your phone and explicitly do something when you want to know. Our goal is we want to be able to provide you the things you want to know immediately without you having to wait, without you having to explicitly go and interact.
And how would you ensure that that's a really good user experience while you do that?
So I think that's one of the reasons why we start working on things a long time ahead of when actual users see them, so that we have the opportunity to have, people internally try things out, work with them for a while, actually see, our employees are also our users, and they're our harshest critics, and so being able to say, we're going to try some things out that might be, push the platforms. Right now the current platforms have issues about multitasking, running apps all the time or in the background. It's hard to do. So where we want to be in the future is that we are sort of integrated in and seamless, and so we can force that a bit now. And on the social front, I think, we talked a little bit about this before, but figuring out ways to make it so easy to just wrap up a moment. If I'm sitting sitting at a concert, or I'm out someplace and I hear something that really it evokes memories, whatever, it should be so easy for me just to say, hey everybody, this moment right here reminds me of when we used to hang out and do things together. And I don't have to type lots of stuff up, and I don't have to pick things. It just sort of, a photo, that audio, the feelings around it, and we're just able to convey that. And to me, that's a challenge for both companies to provide.
Yeah, it would also be really cool if you imagine tying it back to past moments. Like you're at a concert listening to whatever your favorite Neil Diamond or Jay-Z song is, depending your musical taste, and all of a sudden something comes back of the last time you were there. So that's a Shazam vision of where the world's headed 3 to 5 years. We're now jumping to a very different vertical. When you look out 3 to 5 years, where's the world heading? What role does social play in it? What role does mobile play in, et cetera?
Yeah, so I think for Endomondo and for the fitness vertical in general, these couple of years here have been about really just showing people what the mobile phone can do as a tool, track your workouts, provide audio feedback along the way. But going forward, I think we're going to see a lot more on the social side. We're only just getting started now on how that can really motivate. And then the other aspect is providing personal and educating feedback. Not just track what you do and tell you for every mile how well you're doing, but actually help you improve and help you set goals and offer you the programs to make you reach those goals. I think that will be next. And then, of course, in terms of platform, it's moving away from web, and it's going to be mobile only, and then tablet for us afterwards for analyzing your run.
So it seems like there's a few themes there. There's a real-time component, which are the real-time feedback. There's also evolving the product to be less about just what's happening and more it literally is almost a mentoring product, which is showing you how to improve various aspects.
Yeah, and just really provide very relevant feedback on how to move on from here. So, not just hold the user's hand, but also pat them on the back when they do well and kick their ass when they don't do anything at all. And just really, there's a lot to do still on those topics.
So now jumping to your industry, where do you see 3 to 5 years out? And kind of from your product.
So I think there is one thing I mentioned before, which is the geography of the source of music that will change, as I mentioned before. But more specifically, I see the service will offer you anytime, anywhere, any device perfectly. So this will not be anymore the issue. I see the production process of music changing drastically. Instead of having an artist working very, very deeply to launch then one single, and then a few singles, and then one album, and then 2 years after another album, I see a continuum creation stream, and each piece of this creation stream will be shared and monetized naturally as the final single. And so I see a world where finally there is a permanent conversation, artistic conversation between artists and fans, between fans together in a space where I'd love to be Deezer.
So if that's now, we've had 3 visions in 3 different industries of where the world is headed. From an artist discovery being very different to using kind of your app to shape and give people feedback on it, to a Shazam vision of giving a controlled user experience where you have these kind of serendipitous moments and memories that you're able to wrap up. It seems underlying all of this, though, is an issue of discovery. where even today, not even projecting forward, you have 700,000 apps in the iOS ecosystem. You have 700,000 apps or so on Android. I buy a new device, and I'm going, what app should I use? How do you think about the issue of discovery? Because it seems like it underlies all of this. If your app's not discovered, the great experience you'll never have. How do you think about Facebook in that context?
I think, the app stores in general, Android stores, are built into if you have a success, you have a success. Not assessing finally a little bit assessing the reality of what you're contributing, but mainly the success of your way of putting your product on the market. What's interesting with Facebook is the virality has something to do with the real usage. And so the success is not the dividend of your commercial tactics. The success is the dividend of the real consumer acceptance. So for us, the fact of recruiting new subs, new registers through Facebook, and using the virality of Facebook is much closer to the reality of the experience we propose. So I think there will be a balance between algorithm-based discovery tools on traditional app stores, usage-based discovery tools on Facebook, and it will just force us to be very agile and to be very focused on our brand. Because at the end, every energy, every sweating day, working hard and so on, is capitalized not only on our data, not only on our users, but also on our brand. And the only way as let's say, not startups, but as starting companies versus those giants is to be neutral, to work with everybody, to understand their model, but to be very clear about where we concentrate the value, which is the brand, or brand ourselves.
And then Mette, as you think about discovery of the Endomondo experience today, what role how do you leverage Facebook in that process? And then as you push forward into the vision you're creating, how do you see Facebook's role evolving?
So right now we use Facebook single sign-on, of course, and that's really increased our sign-up rate significantly. And we do hope when we start integrating the live experience more that the virality of seeing somebody's post and actually interacting with that will motivate even more people to join and sign up and start tracking.
And in the context of Shazam?
So for us, we've have gotten a fair amount of growth sort of organically in many markets. And so, the way we look at Facebook is as an enhancer and to a certain extent a way to make it easier for people to actually for it to the app to spread virally on its own. We actually find one of the useful bits of both, I think, distribution and feedback we get is the Facebook rating system. Like being able to go in and see what are users who are using our app and Facebook Connected actually, how are they reviewing us? Because the App Store review systems to date have been, in general, pretty gamed. It's not something that actually is a normal part of the flow for most users to go back and rate things. And so we actually find that we get a pretty high confidence in the ratings we get out of Facebook. And so just that piece to us helps us tune things, and the distribution we get is through the users that actually really engage deeply with the product. Their friends can see it.
So, final question, while we only have a couple minutes left. If you had one piece of advice to give to the audience in this room or watching us by live stream around building on Facebook platform based on your experiences over the last year to 2 years, what would it be? Mette, why don't we start with you?
Well, I think for us the most important thing has been not to have sharing just for the sake of sharing, but make sure that there's actual user value in it, so that the user who shares things gets something out of it. In our case, motivation, encouragement, on the inspiration of others, and also to make sure that these posts are interesting. So if it's a 10K run, it's quite an accomplishment compared to a lot of other posts. You've actually been out and sweating and really giving it your all. So So we do think it's important to make sure that it's interesting for both the one sharing and for the friends who are reading it after.
Jason, what would be your one piece of advice?
Take advantage. I think it's important to take advantage of the new things Facebook offers. I wouldn't, bury that code under concrete though, because as a Facebook developer, you have to know that APIs will change. It is a platform that innovates faster and changes underneath you faster than most others. And so the good and the challenge of that is there.
Feedback taken. And then, Axel, what would be your one piece of advice?
So first of all, think global. Think global not in the complexity of the globality, because this is what Facebook could contribute the most. And second of all, no more social for social, but social to really create a real and not artificial benefit to your users, because this is where you belong to.
So thank you to all three of you for kind of sharing this. Really appreciate it. And I hope you guys found this enjoyable and look forward to talking after you have any questions.